welcome to Rubens to Sickert, the study of drawing. In this exhibition highlights tour, I'm going to introduce you to a little-known university drawings collection, its little-known collector professor, James Anthony Betts, and together a little of what they reveal about the study of drawing in British art schools in the early to middle decades of the 20th century. Our focus is Reading School of Art at the University of Reading. In the 19th century, however, it was actually based here in the building that now houses Reading Museum. The upstairs windows gallery was actually purpose-built for life drawing. This exhibition celebrates the simple beauty of drawing, and as part of a wider programme of joint working between the university and the museum, it highlights our joint history as home to an important regional school of art, with drawing absolutely at the centre of the syllabus. Professor Betts was head of the School of Art at the University of Reading for a period of 30 years between 1933 and 1963. In the 1950s, he began to amass a teaching collection of master drawings, much of which is now on public display around me for the first time. Betts believed in the importance of access to art for his students, and that drawings could introduce them to great artists in the most immediate way. Old Masters, that foundational touchstone within art history, and the new modules Betts had recently introduced to the fine art syllabus, are where he began. Jacopo Bertoia's sheet of studies is one of the very first drawings Betts purchased for the collection. A kind of working brainstorm, it brings together several different mediums and motifs and aptly demonstrates the different effects that could be achieved with various media. The fluidity and precision of the pen and ink is used to emphasize the exaggerated musculature of the seated figure, whereas the smoother material and subtler handling of chalk conveys volume and the play of light and shadow in the arm studies taken from life. Bertoia was a fluent and talented draftsman who worked in Parma towards the end of the 16th century, and he was influenced by some of the most famous artists of the Italian High Renaissance. Above all, he followed his fellow Parmese artist, Parmigianino, to the extent that their drawings are often confused today. The composition of this drawing was built in stages, sometimes by turning the sheet between sketches, and Bertoia worked both from life and from sources. The twisted figure here bears a resemblance to the pose of Michelangelo's Libyan Sibyl from the celebrated Sistine Chapel ceiling, whilst on the verso of the sheet, also filled with studies, the seated lover's motif is directly copied from an etching by Parmigianino. It is joined by 3 standing males, a red chalk study of an ox, and an anatomized arm. As a drawing in a collection about the study and teaching of drawing, this sheet covers the fundamentals, that is, working from life, anatomy, and making copies from other sources. The Bertoia was purchased together with 6 other old master sheets dated between the 1500s and the 1800s. Crucially, all of these drawings also share a key focus on the human figure. As had been the case for centuries, Betts saw learning to draw the human body as the focus of art education and reflected this in his collecting. Beyond that, he simply wanted to showcase the flexibility and beauty of drawing as a medium. It wouldn't be a highlights tour without stopping next at one of the collection and exhibition's headline drawings. That is Peter Paul Rubens' small portrait sketch of Marie de Medici from around 1622, a small black chalk sketch of French Queen Mother and former Queen Regent Marie de Medici. The drawing appears to be a work from life in which Rubens captures the Queen in a soft expression with detail focused around the eyes and mouth. It is an unusually intimate, informal, and even a little unflattering study of a royal, and as such it was probably intended for the artist's personal use. The study is linked to Marie de Medici's cycle, a monumental series of 24 paintings in which the Queen charged celebrated 17th century Flemish court artist Rubens with effectively recasting her turbulent regency and tricky relationship with her son, King Louis XIII, in a more positive light. The paintings originally hung in Marie de Medici's residence, the Luxembourg Palace in Paris, but now they're on display at the Louvre Museum. A similar expression imposed to the Reading drawing are found in the 7th painting from the cycle, which recreates the moment Marie de Medici first met her husband, King Henri IV of France. The king is cast in the role of the Greek god Zeus with his signature firebolt and eagle, whilst the queen plays the role of Hera, Zeus's loyal consort shown with her chariot and peacocks. As in the drawing, her head is bowed demurely in the presence of her all-powerful husband. Betts started his collection with old masters, but the majority of the works he amassed were actually by artists working around his own lifetime. Frankly, it was more affordable given the stretched departmental budgets Betts was working with. But modern drawing also had qualities that Betts admired, showing how artists had started to pull away from traditional academic approaches that had dominated figure drawing in the previous centuries. In particular, Betts admired the work of the French Impressionist and Post-Impressionist artists, and their carefree spirit is represented in the collection by the work of Count Albert de Belleroche, who captured contemporary scenes such as this vibrant study of two women reading, where ink is applied exuberantly over pencil and pools in blots that adds a sense of vibrancy and flair to the composition. Belleroche was a founder member of the 1903 Salon d'Automne, set up in opposition to the official Paris Salon where establishment artists exhibited their work. Well connected among bohemian artist circles, Belleroche's talent was recognised by his more famous contemporary Edgar Degas, who also owned examples of his work. An intimate study of the artist Henri Toulouse-Lautrec, Belleroche's lifelong friend, is also on display, together with 5 sketchbook sheets that document Belleroche's regular trips to the Moulin Rouge, opposite which he kept a studio. Betts acquired these studies directly from Belleroche's son in 1956. As heir to a rich aristocratic family, Belleroche's wealth freed him from having to accept commissions to support himself, and he lived the life of a bohemian artist, liberated from its more common financial struggles. Betts' own formation as an up-and-coming artist in the 1920s is also central to the story of this exhibition, as it offers us an important sense of where he was coming from and the trends in drawing to which he was exposed as a student. The artist Henry Moore actually drew him in 1924 when they were students together at the Royal College of Art, both part of an up-and-coming group of ambitious young artists. Moore's approach here, in this drawing from the collection of the Henry Moore Foundation, is fairly traditional. Areas of shade and graduating tone are used to build volume, and he captures Betts in an expression of intense inward concentration. However, we can see a nod towards the more experimental forms of the sculpture Moore was already exhibiting in the simplified upside-down outline of the same figure that is drawn just alongside. Betts and his fellow students were exposed to diverse approaches to drawing at the college. Among the most experimental was that of Leon Underwood, a tutor there until 1923. Underwood's buzzword was form, and he encouraged students to break away from careful contours and highly worked tonal shading. As we can see in this life drawing from 1924, Underwood was more interested in the use of drawing to express physicality and movement and to experiment with different methods of mark making. Here, lines are repeated and contours are redrawn within the body's outline. A pillar of white heightening applied along the front body gives a sense of added stability and strength. The influence of Underwood's teaching is absolutely clear in Betts' early work. This study of a reclining nude, sketched in body colour using staccato curved brushstrokes, was deemed such a good testament of Underwood's unconventional teaching methods that he actually donated it to the British Museum in 1927. Betts belonged to a group of Royal College students who lobbied Underwood to keep teaching them life drawing after he quit the Royal College in high dudgeon in 1923 following a disagreement about teaching methods, and even signing his resignation on a piece of toilet paper. As a result of this, Betts belonged to a group of Royal College students who attended evening classes at the Brook Green School of Drawing run by Underwood in his Hammersmith studio. As part payment for their instruction, the students had to give Underwood their best drawings. He destroyed the majority. This study by Betts was a rare exception, and so too was this study by Blair Hughes Stanton, also now in the collection of the British Museum, where Underwood donated it in 1940. It is not thought that Underwood saved any drawings by perhaps his most famous student, Henry Moore. However, this study from the British Museum certainly shows the influence of his teaching. The spherical form of its torso and thighs shows the emphasis that Underwood placed on exploring geometric forms within the body's outline. As I mentioned earlier, Betts arrived in Reading in 1933 as head of the School of Art. Much of his later collecting was intimately connected to what would become the dominant influence on his teaching during this period: the work of Walt Sickert, British artist and founding member of the Camden Town group of artists, who reflected modern urban life in their work. By 1933, Walter Sickert was an experienced teacher, writer and celebrity with strong views on art. He also became a personal friend of Betts, who would go on to amass 16 Sickert drawings, both for his personal collection and for the university. The university would go on to acquire the majority of his personal collection in 1994. The little bed belonged to Betts' personal collection and is one of Sickert's earliest explorations of the female nude, or naked to use the term that he preferred. Sickert advocated for such truthful images that showed the model in their everyday environment. Here we look upon her as if through a secret keyhole into her bedroom, and the hard iron bedstead, which would become something of a motif for Sickert's nude studies, is introduced as a foil for the soft curves of the female body. Standing at the head of the figure, scarcely visible, is another nude female torso cut off at the breasts and hips, introducing a note of psychological intrigue about the relationship between the two figures. Sickert saw drawing as absolutely fundamental to his practice as an artist, and he taught that artists should always draw rapidly, thus avoiding the mistakes that come from over-labouring, and always see the subject and its environment as part of the same design. These were principles that Betts adopted wholesale into his own drawing practice and teaching at Reading, as can be seen in a selection of student work from the period. He even introduced an iron bedstead into the life drawing classroom at Reading. The Sickert-inspired approach at Reading School of Art was contemporary in its day, but by 1963, when Betts retired, it had become decidedly old-fashioned. In fact, the art school, which thanks to Betts was the first in England to introduce art as a degree programme rather than a fine art diploma, was among the last to move away from the life room and observational drawing as the foundation of art instruction. The artist Claude Rogers, who replaced Betts as head of the department in 1963, noted that a real lack of abstract art was being produced by students. He introduced new tutors to the department to bring in new ideas about drawing. They included Tom Cross, Martin Froy, and Rita Doner. Rita Doner's life size is an apt illustration of just how different things became. In 1970, Doner was a lecturer at the school and was allocated a model and a room for a term to develop a new module for her students. Far from life drawing, Doner and her students collaboratively devised a performance piece in response to the 1968 student demonstrations. The room was painted white, a grid was drawn across it, and a series of crosses regulated performers' movements across the space. This drawing from the Arts Council collection is imposing in both its scale and abstract visual vocabulary when compared to the majority of the works on display in this exhibition. It is a preparatory study for the finished piece now in the Tate collection called Reflection on 3 Weeks in May that responds to the period Doner spent teaching the module I just described. She took nearly a year off teaching to work on it, exploring how multidimensional events could be recorded in drawing and painting. That brings us to the end of this exhibition highlights tour, and I hope I've been able to offer a taste of what's on display. More information about all of the drawings can be found online in a version of this exhibition hosted at collections.reading.ac.uk/art-collections, and the catalogue for the exhibition is available to purchase in Reading Museum shop and online. I hope many of you will be able to visit the exhibition in person before it closes on the 7th of August, but in the meantime, thank you very much for joining me.